The air hung thick and heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth, a primal aroma that seemed to hum with secrets. He sat across from me, a man weathered like an ancient oak, his eyes holding the deep, unblinking gaze of someone who'd seen too much, someone who'd brushed against the edges of the world as we know it and found something else. "They call me Jed," he rasped, his voice a low rumble that seemed to emanate from the very forest we sat beside. "And I lived with Bigfoot for 5 years. The words hung in the air, as tangible as the mist clinging to the valley below. I'd chased stories like this for years, whispers and legends, grainy photographs and shaky videos. But Jed was different. There was a stillness about him, an undeniable authenticity that resonated deeper than any fabricated tale. He wasn't seeking fame or fortune, he simply wanted to tell his story, to unburden himself of the weight of those 5 years. He'd been a young man then, barely out of his teens, filled with a restless spirit and a yearning for something beyond the ordinary. He'd drifted through odd jobs, logging, guiding hunting trips, always drawn back to the dense, untamed wilderness of the Pacific Northwest. It was during one of these solo treks, deep into the Olympic National Forest, that he first encountered them. He wasn't hunting. He'd packed only a bedroll, some basic supplies, and a battered copy of Thoreau's Walden. He sought solitude, a chance to reconnect with himself amidst the towering trees and cascading waterfalls. He'd been hiking for days, pushing further than he ever had before, when he noticed the tracks. They were unlike anything he'd ever seen. Gigantic, undeniably hominid, but impossibly large and powerfully imprinted in the soft earth. He followed them, a knot of apprehension tightening in his stomach, his romantic notions of wilderness solitude slowly giving way to a primal fear. He found them near a secluded creek, a family group of 3. A large male, easily 8 feet tall, covered in thick, dark brown fur, a slightly smaller female, her fur a lighter, reddish hue, and a juvenile, perhaps 4 or 5 years old, its movements playful and curious. They were drinking from the creek, their massive forms framed by the ancient trees, a scene ripped straight from a forgotten epoch. Jed froze, his breath caught in his throat. He wanted to run, to scramble back down the trail and forget he'd ever seen them. But something held him rooted to the spot, a mixture of terror and fascination. He watched them for what felt like an eternity, his heart pounding against his ribs, before the male finally noticed him. The creature turned its head, its eyes, deep-set and intelligent, locking onto Jed's. There was no aggression in its gaze, only a curious assessment. It grunted, a low, guttural sound that vibrated in Jed's chest. Then, it simply turned back to the creek and continued drinking. Jed, paralyzed by fear and disbelief, slowly backed away, retreating until the trees swallowed him whole. He ran then, not stopping until he reached his camp, his mind reeling. He spent a sleepless night, wrestling with what he'd seen. Had he imagined it? Was it some elaborate hoax? But the memory of those eyes, that powerful, intelligent gaze, remained burned into his mind. He considered leaving, abandoning his quest for solitude and returning to the safety of civilization. But the pull of the unknown was too strong. He knew he had to go back. Over the next few weeks, Jed cautiously returned to the area, always careful to maintain a respectful distance. He left offerings, fruits, vegetables, even a small, hand-carved wooden flute. He never approached them directly, but he sensed they were aware of his presence. Slowly, tentatively, a kind of understanding began to develop. The creatures, whom Jed began to think of as the Sasquatch family, allowed him to observe them from a distance. He learned their routines, their habits, their methods of communication. He discovered that they were far more intelligent and complex than he could have ever imagined. He learned that their vocalizations were not just random grunts and howls, but a complex language of clicks, whistles, and modulated tones. He observed them using tools, stones to crack nuts, branches to dig for roots, even rudimentary shelters built from interwoven branches and leaves. He saw their compassion, their familial bonds, the gentle way the male cared for the female and the playful interactions with the juvenile. He witnessed their respect for the forest, their careful avoidance of disturbing the natural order. One day, after several months of cautious observation, the male Sasquatch approached him. Jed, initially terrified, stood his ground. The creature stopped a few feet away, its massive form towering over him. It extended a hand, its palm open, an offering of trust. Jed hesitated, then slowly, trembling, he reached out and took the creature's hand. The grip was surprisingly gentle, the hand warm and calloused. In that moment, a bridge was formed, a connection forged between two worlds. From that day forward, Jed's life was irrevocably changed. He was accepted into the Sasquatch family, living alongside them in the heart of the wilderness. He learned to communicate with them, to understand their ways, to see the world through their eyes. He learned that they called themselves the Hawk, a word that roughly translated to people of the forest. They were deeply connected to the land, their lives interwoven with the rhythms of nature. They possessed a profound knowledge of the forest, its plants, its animals, its secrets. They taught Jed about the medicinal properties of plants, how to track animals, how to survive in the harshest conditions. They showed him the hidden pathways of the forest, the secret places where the veil between worlds seemed thin. He learned that they were not the savage, monstrous creatures depicted in folklore. They were intelligent, sentient beings with a rich culture and a deep spiritual connection to the earth. They were shy and reclusive, avoiding contact with humans whenever possible, fearing the destructive potential of humankind. Jed became their protector, their advocate, their bridge to the human world. He kept their existence a secret, shielding them from the prying eyes of researchers and the destructive intentions of hunters. He learned to live as they did, to walk silently through the forest, to listen to the whispers of the wind, to see the world through their eyes. He lived with them for 5 years, a time that felt both like an eternity and a fleeting moment. He became fluent in their language, learned their customs, and shared their lives. He was no longer just Jed, the young man seeking solitude in the wilderness. He was Jed Hawk, a member of the family, a guardian of the forest. He described their society as one based on cooperation and mutual respect. There was no hierarchy, no competition for resources. They shared everything, working together to ensure the survival of the group. Decisions were made through consensus, with the wisdom of the elders respected above all else. Their diet consisted primarily of plants, fruits, nuts, and roots, supplemented by occasional insects and small animals. They were skilled hunters, but they only took what they needed, always mindful of the balance of nature. They had a deep understanding of the interconnectedness of all things, recognizing that every action had a consequence, that even the smallest disturbance could have a ripple effect throughout the ecosystem. They possessed a spiritual awareness that transcended human understanding. They believed that the forest was alive, that every tree, every rock, every creature possessed a spirit. They communicated with these spirits through rituals and ceremonies, seeking guidance and wisdom. Jed witnessed these rituals firsthand, participating in their dances and songs, feeling the energy of the forest flowing through him. He experienced moments of profound connection, moments when the boundaries between the physical and spiritual worlds seemed to dissolve. He learned that they had a history that stretched back thousands of years, a history passed down through generations through oral tradition and intricate cave paintings. They were the remnants of an ancient lineage, a lineage that predated modern humans, a lineage that held the key to understanding our place in the universe. He described their cave paintings in detail, intricate depictions of animals, plants, and celestial events. He spoke of symbols and glyphs that seemed to hold a deeper meaning, a meaning that he was only beginning to understand. He recounted stories of ancient migrations, of conflicts with other hominid species, of a time when the world was a very different place. He learned of their connection to the stars, their understanding of cosmic cycles, their belief in the interconnectedness of all things. But then, after 5 years, something happened that forced Jed to leave. He wouldn't elaborate at first, his eyes clouding over with a pain that seemed to penetrate his very soul. He simply said that there was a conflict, a disagreement with another group of Hawk, a violation of their code. He'd been forced to choose between his loyalty to the family and his responsibility to protect them. He chose to leave, believing that his presence was endangering them. He left with a heavy heart, carrying the weight of his decision, knowing that he could never truly return. He returned to the human world, a changed man. He tried to resume his old life, but he could never forget what he had seen, what he had experienced. He was haunted by the memory of the hawk, by their wisdom, their compassion, their connection to the earth. He tried to share his story, but he was met with skepticism and ridicule. People dismissed him as a crank, a liar, or simply insane. He learned to keep his secret, to bury his memories deep within his heart. He drifted through life, always on the fringes, always yearning for the wilderness, always searching for a way to reconnect with the hawk. He never found them again, but he never stopped believing in their existence. He dedicated his life to protecting the forest, fighting against logging companies and developers, advocating for wilderness preservation. He became a voice for the voiceless, a guardian of the ancient ways. He lived a solitary life, content with his memories, but always carrying the burden of his secret. He knew that he was one of the few humans who truly understood the Sasquatch, who knew that they were not monsters, but intelligent, sentient beings deserving of respect and protection. Now, years later, sitting across from me, he was finally ready to share his story. He knew that it would be met with disbelief, that many would dismiss him as a madman. But he felt a sense of urgency, a feeling that the world needed to know about the hawk, that their story needed to be told. He spoke for hours, his voice gaining strength as he recounted his experiences. He described the Sasquatch family in vivid detail, their personalities, their habits, their unique way of life. He shared their stories, their legends, their beliefs. He showed me photographs, sketches, and artifacts that he had collected over the years, tangible evidence of their existence. He answered my questions patiently and thoughtfully, never wavering in his conviction. He admitted that there were things he still didn't understand, mysteries that remained unsolved. But he was certain of one thing: the Sasquatch were real, and they were in danger. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the valley, Jed fell silent. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of hope and apprehension. "You believe me, don't you?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. I nodded, my heart filled with a sense of awe and wonder. I had come seeking a story, a sensational tale of Bigfoot encounters. But I had found something far more profound, a glimpse into a hidden world, a connection to an ancient lineage, a reminder of our place in the delicate web of life. I knew that I had to share Jed's story, to bring his message to the world. But I also knew that it was a dangerous task, that there were forces that would seek to silence him, to discredit him, to erase the truth. As I prepared to leave, Jed handed me a small, intricately carved wooden flute. "This belonged to the male," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "He wanted you to have it, to remember them." I took the flute, its smooth surface warm to the touch. I knew that it was more than just a gift, it was a responsibility. A responsibility to tell their story, to protect their world, to honor their legacy. I drove away from Jed's cabin, the image of his weathered face etched in my mind. The forest seemed to watch me, its ancient trees whispering secrets in the wind. I felt a sense of purpose, a sense of destiny. I knew that my life would never be the same. I spent the next few months researching Jed's story, verifying his claims, seeking out other accounts of Sasquatch encounters. I interviewed scientists, researchers, and eyewitnesses. I traveled to the Olympic National Forest, exploring the areas that Jed had described, searching for evidence of the hawk. I found traces, faint but undeniable, footprints, broken branches, unusual structures. I also encountered skepticism, ridicule, and outright hostility. Many dismissed Jed as a fraud, a liar, or simply delusional. But I also found believers, people who had seen the Sasquatch themselves, who had experienced the same sense of awe and wonder. They shared their stories with me, confirming Jed's account, adding their own pieces to the puzzle. Slowly, painstakingly, I began to piece together a picture of the Sasquatch, a picture that was far more complex and nuanced than the popular image of a hairy monster. I learned that they were not just a species of ape, but a sentient, intelligent people with a rich culture and a deep spiritual connection to the earth. I also learned that they were in danger. Their habitat was being destroyed by logging, mining, and development. They were being hunted, harassed, and exploited. Their very existence was threatened. I knew that I had to do something, that I couldn't stand by and watch as the hawk disappeared from the face of the earth. I decided to write a book, to share Jed's story with the world, to raise awareness about the plight of the Sasquatch. I poured my heart and soul into the project, working tirelessly to gather information, to verify facts, to craft a compelling narrative. I interviewed Jed extensively, delving deeper into his experiences, uncovering new details, exploring the mysteries that remained unsolved. As I wrote, I began to feel a sense of connection to the hawk, a sense of responsibility to protect them. I realized that their story was not just their story, it was our story, the story of humanity's relationship with nature, the story of our place in the universe. The book was a success. It became a bestseller, sparking a global debate about the existence of the Sasquatch. It raised awareness about their plight, inspiring people to take action to protect their habitat. But it also attracted unwanted attention. Researchers, hunters, and government agencies descended on the Olympic National Forest, searching for the hawk. Jed became a target of harassment and intimidation. I realized that I had made a mistake, that I had endangered the hawk by revealing their existence to the world. I felt a deep sense of guilt and remorse. I knew that I had to do something to protect them, to undo the damage that I had caused. I contacted Jed, and together we devised a plan. We decided to create a sanctuary, a protected area where the hawk could live in peace, free from human interference. We worked with environmental organizations and government agencies to secure the land, to establish regulations, to enforce protection. It was a long and arduous process, but we eventually succeeded. The hawk sanctuary was established, a safe haven for the Sasquatch, a place where they could continue to live their lives according to their own ways. Jed dedicated the rest of his life to protecting the sanctuary, monitoring the hawk, and educating the public about their existence. He became a symbol of hope, a champion of the wilderness, a guardian of the ancient ways. He died peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by the trees he loved, his spirit finally free to roam the forests he had protected. His legacy lived on, inspiring generations to respect nature, to protect the environment, to believe in the impossible. His story, the story of the man who lived with Bigfoot for 5 years, became a legend, a testament to the power of belief, the importance of compassion, and the enduring mystery of the wilderness. And me? I continued to share his story, to write about the hawk, to advocate for their protection. I knew that their future was uncertain, that their existence was still threatened. But I also knew that they were resilient, that they were adaptable, that they were capable of surviving. Their survival, however, hinges on a question that continues to haunt me: did Jed truly tell me everything? He spoke extensively about their language, their culture, and their daily lives, but there were certain aspects he remained tight-lipped about. He hinted at a power, a capability the hawk possessed that transcended mere physical prowess and deep-seated spiritual connection. He mentioned it only in hushed tones, a certain fear flickering in his eyes. He called it the silent song. What was this silent song, and why was Jed so afraid to speak of it? The silent song was more than just a metaphor, Jed had insisted, his voice dropping to a near whisper, a stark contrast to the booming pronouncements he'd made about hawk hunting techniques or their social structures. It was, he claimed, an intrinsic part of their being, as fundamental as breathing, as essential as the forest itself. He spoke of it as a force that could shape reality, a power that resonated within the very fabric of existence. He struggled to articulate it, searching for words that seemed to constantly elude him. It was like trying to capture smoke with bare hands, he lamented, or to describe a color that existed outside the human spectrum. My attempts to press him for details were met with a wall of resistance, a palpable fear that emanated from him like a physical barrier. He would become agitated, his hands trembling, his gaze darting nervously around the room as if expecting someone, or something, to overhear. He spoke of consequences, of dangers that I, a mere outsider, could not possibly comprehend. He implied that the silent song was not meant for human ears, or minds, and that any attempt to delve too deeply into its mysteries could have catastrophic results. His reluctance only intensified my curiosity. If the hawk were truly as advanced, as spiritually attuned as Jed claimed, then this silent song could represent a paradigm shift in our understanding of consciousness and the universe. It could be the key to unlocking untold potential, or, as Jed seemed to believe, a Pandora's box best left unopened. My research into other Sasquatch accounts yielded tantalizingly vague clues. Scattered amongst the anecdotal reports of footprints and vocalizations, I found whispers of unusual phenomena, instances of seemingly impossible feats of strength, inexplicable disappearances, and strange occurrences of telepathy or precognition. These accounts were often dismissed as folklore, exaggerations, or outright fabrications. But when viewed through the lens of Jed's claims about the silent song, they took on a new and unsettling significance. I consulted with linguists, anthropologists, and parapsychologists, seeking any insights they might offer. The linguists were fascinated by Jed's descriptions of the hawk language, a complex system of vocalizations, gestures, and expressions that went far beyond the capabilities of any known ape species. They noted that the hawk language seemed to be deeply intertwined with their environment, incorporating elements of the forest's sounds and rhythms. They speculated that this could indicate a form of synesthesia, a blending of the senses that allowed the hawk to perceive the world in a fundamentally different way. The anthropologists were intrigued by Jed's account of the hawk culture, their intricate social structures, and their elaborate rituals. They pointed out that many indigenous cultures around the world had similar beliefs about the interconnectedness of all things, and that the hawk's reverence for nature was a common theme in shamanistic traditions. They suggested that the silent song could be a manifestation of this interconnectedness, a way for the hawk to tap into the collective consciousness of the planet. The parapsychologists were the most receptive to Jed's claims about the silent song. They had been studying phenomena such as telepathy, clairvoyance, and psychokinesis for decades, and they were always on the lookout for new evidence that could shed light on the nature of consciousness. They suggested that the silent song could be a form of psychic communication, a way for the hawk to interact with each other, and with the environment, on a nonverbal level. They proposed conducting experiments to test Jed's claims, but he refused, fearing that it could harm the hawk. Despite my inability to directly investigate the silent song, I began to develop a theoretical framework for understanding it. I theorized that it was not simply a form of communication, but a fundamental force that shaped the hawk's reality. It was a way for them to manipulate the very fabric of existence, to bend the laws of physics to their will. This sounded far-fetched, even to me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something profound, and potentially dangerous, at the heart of Jed's story. I considered the possibility that the silent song was related to the hawk's unique physiology. Jed had mentioned that they possessed exceptionally large brains, and that their neural structures were significantly different from those of humans. Perhaps these differences allowed them to access regions of the brain that were dormant in humans, unlocking latent psychic abilities. I also considered the role of the environment. The Olympic National Forest was a place of immense beauty and power, a place where the forces of nature were palpable. Perhaps the hawk had learned to harness these forces, to tap into the energy of the forest and use it to amplify their own psychic abilities. The more I researched, the more I realized that the silent song was not just a mystery, it was a puzzle with profound implications for our understanding of the universe. It challenged our assumptions about the nature of reality, the limits of human potential, and the relationship between mind and matter. But the more I learned, the more apprehensive I became. Jed's fear was contagious. I started to have nightmares, vivid dreams in which I was surrounded by towering figures, their eyes glowing with an eerie light. I could hear a sound, a low hum that vibrated through my entire being, a sound that seemed to penetrate my very soul. It was both terrifying and alluring, a siren song that threatened to consume me. I began to question my sanity. Was I simply projecting my own fears and desires onto the hawk? Was I allowing Jed's story to warp my perception of reality? Was I in danger of losing myself in this obsession? I decided to take a break from my research, to distance myself from the hawk and the silent song. I went on a trip to the mountains, seeking solace in the solitude of nature. I hiked for days, immersing myself in the beauty of the wilderness, trying to clear my mind of all thoughts and worries. But even in the remotest corners of the mountains, I couldn't escape the feeling that I was being watched. I would catch glimpses of movement in the trees, hear strange sounds in the distance, feel a presence that I couldn't explain. Was it my imagination, or were the hawks somehow aware of my presence? One evening, as I sat by a campfire, I heard a distinct melody carried on the wind. It was unlike anything I had ever heard before, a haunting, ethereal tune that seemed to resonate with the very essence of the mountains. It was beautiful and sorrowful, a lament for a lost world. As I listened, I felt a wave of emotions wash over me, joy, sadness, anger, fear. It was as if the music was tapping into my deepest memories, my most hidden desires, my most profound regrets. I felt a connection to something vast and ancient, something that transcended time and space. The music faded away as quickly as it had appeared, leaving me breathless and trembling. I knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that it was the silent song. The hawk were communicating with me, reaching out to me across the vast expanse of the wilderness. But why? What did they want? Were they trying to warn me, to guide me, or to lure me into a trap? I had no way of knowing. All I knew was that I was no longer an observer, I was a participant in something far bigger than myself. I returned to Jed's cabin, determined to uncover the truth about the silent song. I confronted him with my experience in the mountains, demanding an explanation. He was reluctant to speak, but he could see that I was no longer willing to be denied. He finally relented, his voice heavy with resignation. He told me that the silent song was not just a form of communication, it was a way for the hawk to manipulate reality. It was a power that had been passed down through generations, a power that had allowed them to survive for millennia in the face of adversity. He explained that the hawk used the silent song to heal their sick, to protect themselves from danger, to communicate with the animals and plants of the forest. They could even use it to influence the weather, to summon rain or to ward off storms. But the silent song was also a dangerous power, he warned. It could be used for selfish purposes, to manipulate others, to control the environment. And if it fell into the wrong hands, it could have catastrophic consequences. That was the reason he had been so reluctant to speak about it, he explained. He feared that if humans learned about the silent song, they would try to exploit it, to use it for their own gain. And that would lead to the destruction of the hawk, and possibly the entire planet. He then revealed the reason he had been banished from the hawk family. He had witnessed another member of the hawk clan using the silent song for personal gain, manipulating a herd of deer to be easily hunted. He had confronted the individual, but the hawk denied it, leading to a violent confrontation. Jed, realizing the danger this hawk posed, attempted to stop him, violating the sacred code against harming another member of the family, even in self-defense. This forced him to choose between loyalty and his understanding of the potential consequences, leading to his self-imposed exile. Jed looked at me, his eyes filled with despair. I failed them, he said. I couldn't protect them from themselves. And now, I may have doomed them by telling you about them. I tried to reassure him, telling him that I would do everything in my power to protect the hawk, to ensure that the silent song was never used for evil purposes. But I knew that it was a promise I might not be able to keep. The world was full of ambitious, greedy, and ruthless people who would stop at nothing to gain power. And if they learned about the silent song, they would undoubtedly try to harness it for their own nefarious ends. I asked Jed if there was anything I could do, any way to help the hawk. He thought for a moment, then said that there was one thing. He told me about a hidden cave, a place where the hawk stored their most sacred artifacts, including a crystal skull that was said to be the key to understanding the silent song. He believed that if I could find the skull, I could learn to control the silent song, to use it for good. But he warned that the cave was guarded by powerful spirits, and that only those who were pure of heart could enter without being harmed. He gave me a map, drawn on a piece of birch bark, showing the location of the cave. He told me that it was a dangerous journey, but that it was the only hope for the hawk. I knew that I had to try. I couldn't stand by and watch as the hawk were destroyed, as their ancient wisdom was lost forever. I had to do everything in my power to protect them, to ensure that their story was told, and that their legacy lived on. I packed my bags, gathered my supplies, and set off into the Olympic National Forest. The journey to the hidden cave was long and arduous, filled with challenges and obstacles. I had to navigate treacherous terrain, cross raging rivers, and evade dangerous wildlife. But I pressed on, driven by a sense of purpose, a sense of destiny. I knew that the fate of the hawk, and perhaps the world, rested on my shoulders. As I ventured deeper into the forest, I began to notice strange phenomena. The trees seemed to whisper to me, the animals seemed to guide me, and the very air seemed to vibrate with energy. It was as if the forest was alive, and it was helping me on my quest. I followed Jed's map, carefully avoiding any human settlements. I didn't want to attract any unwanted attention, or to risk revealing the location of the hawk. After days of travel, I finally reached the entrance to the hidden cave. It was a narrow opening in a cliff face, hidden behind a curtain of ivy. I took a deep breath, steeled my resolve, and stepped inside. The cave was dark and damp, the air thick with the scent of moss and decay. I pulled out my flashlight and shone it into the darkness. The beam of light revealed a vast cavern, filled with strange formations and eerie shadows. I proceeded cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. I could feel the presence of the spirits Jed had warned me about, watching me, judging me. I tried to remain calm, to focus on my purpose, to remind myself that I was doing this for the hawk. As I ventured deeper into the cave, I began to see signs of the hawk, cave paintings, carvings, and tools. These artifacts were far more sophisticated than anything I had seen before, suggesting that the hawk possessed advanced knowledge and skills. I also noticed strange symbols and glyphs, similar to those Jed had described. I tried to decipher them, to understand their meaning, but they were too complex, too enigmatic. I felt a sense of frustration, a feeling that I was missing something crucial. Suddenly, I heard a sound, a faint humming that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the cave. It was the silent song, but it was different from the music I had heard in the mountains. It was more intense, more powerful, more all-encompassing. As I listened, I felt a wave of energy wash over me, shaking me to my core. I felt my consciousness expanding, my senses sharpening, my mind opening to new possibilities. I saw visions, fleeting glimpses of the past, the present, and the future. I saw the hawk in their prime, living in harmony with nature, wielding the silent song with wisdom and compassion. I saw the destruction of their habitat, the persecution of their people, the looming threat of extinction. And I saw a glimmer of hope, a chance for survival, a path towards a better future. The visions faded, leaving me breathless and disoriented. I realized that the silent song was not just a form of communication, or a way to manipulate reality, it was a key to unlocking the secrets of the universe. It was a power that could be used for good or evil, and it was up to me to choose which path to follow. I continued to follow the sound of the silent song, venturing deeper and deeper into the cave. Finally, I reached a chamber, a vast, circular space at the heart of the mountain. In the center of the chamber, resting on a pedestal of rock, was the crystal skull. It was a beautiful object, crafted from pure quartz, its surface shimmering with an ethereal light. As I approached the skull, I felt a surge of energy, a connection to something ancient and powerful. I reached out my hand and touched it. The moment my fingers made contact, a beam of light shot out from the skull, engulfing me in its radiant glow. I felt my body dissolving, my consciousness expanding, my mind merging with the universe. I was no longer just myself, I was everything, everywhere, all at once. I understood the secrets of the silent song, the mysteries of the cosmos, the meaning of life. But then, as quickly as it had begun, the experience ended. The light faded, my body rematerialized, and my consciousness returned to its normal state. I stood there, trembling, overwhelmed by what I had experienced. I knew that I had been changed forever, that I could never go back to the way I was before. I picked up the crystal skull, cradling it in my arms. It was warm to the touch, pulsating with energy. I knew that it was more than just an artifact, it was a tool, a key, a gateway to another dimension. I turned and began to walk out of the cave, carrying the skull with me. As I emerged into the sunlight, I felt a sense of hope, a sense of purpose, a sense of responsibility. I knew that my journey was far from over, that the real work was just beginning. But I was ready. I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, to protect the hawk, to share their story with the world, and to use the silent song for the betterment of humanity. But a chilling thought snaked into my mind. The hawk had hidden the skull for a reason. Was I truly ready for this responsibility? Jed's tales of the potential for corruption echoed in my ears. Had I just become another pawn in a game I didn't understand? And more importantly, who else knew about the skull, and what would they do to get their hands on it? The sun, previously warming my face, now felt like the judging eye of an unknown entity, observing my every move. The weight of the crystal skull in my hands felt less like a gift and more like a burden as I stumbled out of the cave and back into the dappled sunlight of the Olympic National Forest. The trees, once welcoming and whispering secrets, now seemed to observe me with a wary suspicion. The forest hadn't changed, but I had. The silent song had irrevocably altered my perception, imbuing the world with a heightened sense of awareness, a sensitivity to the subtle vibrations that permeated all living things. This newfound awareness was terrifying. It was like peeling back layers of reality I wasn't meant to see. It revealed the intricate network of connections between all things, the delicate balance that sustained life, and the pervasive disharmony caused by human actions. The forest was groaning, not in pain exactly, but in a deep, resonant lament for the wounds inflicted upon it, the clear-cut scarring the landscape, the pollution poisoning the rivers, the relentless encroachment of civilization. And I, suddenly attuned to this symphony of suffering, felt the weight of it crushing down on me. Jed's warnings resonated with renewed force. He hadn't just been cautioning me about the dangers of the silent song itself, he'd been trying to protect me from the truth it revealed. The truth about the destructive potential of humanity, the fragility of the natural world, and the overwhelming responsibility that came with wielding such power. The skull pulsed softly in my hands, a silent beacon that I instinctively knew was broadcasting my presence. To whom, or what, I couldn't say. But the feeling of being watched intensified, a prickling sensation on the back of my neck that suggested unseen eyes were scrutinizing my every move. I needed to get away from the cave, to find a place where I could think, where I could try to make sense of what had happened. Jed's cabin, while familiar, felt exposed. Someone, or something, could easily find me there. I needed a place that was both remote and defensible, a sanctuary where I could learn to control the silent song and protect the crystal skull. As I moved through the forest, the landscape began to shift in my perception. What had once seemed like a familiar trail now appeared to be riddled with hidden pathways, subtle clues that pointed towards unseen destinations. The trees seemed to lean in, their branches forming archways that guided me towards a specific direction. It was as if the forest itself was leading me, beckoning me towards a place of safety. Several hours later, after traversing a series of increasingly challenging terrains, scaling steep cliffs, wading through icy streams, and bushwhacking through dense thickets, I stumbled upon a hidden valley. It was a small, secluded enclave, surrounded by towering peaks that blocked out the harsh sunlight. A waterfall cascaded down one side of the valley, feeding a crystal-clear pool that reflected the surrounding cliffs. The air was still and silent, broken only by the gentle rush of water and the occasional chirping of birds. This was it. This was the sanctuary I had been searching for. The valley exuded a sense of peace and tranquility, a feeling of being protected from the outside world. It was as if the very earth here radiated a calming energy, dampening the chaotic vibrations that had been plaguing me since leaving the cave. I found a small, overgrown cave near the base of the waterfall, hidden behind a curtain of moss and ferns. It wasn't much, but it offered shelter from the elements and a degree of concealment. After clearing out the debris and making a makeshift bed of pine needles, I sat down and examined the crystal skull more closely. It was even more intricate than I had initially realized. The skull was not perfectly smooth. Its surface was covered in microscopic etchings, symbols and glyphs that seemed to shift and change as I rotated it in the light. I recognized some of the symbols from the cave paintings, but others were completely alien, unlike anything I had ever seen before. As I focused on the symbols, I began to hear the silent song again, this time more clearly and distinctly. It was no longer a chaotic jumble of emotions and visions but a coherent melody, a complex symphony of sounds that resonated deep within my soul. I felt myself being drawn into the music, my consciousness expanding to encompass the vastness of the universe. The skull seemed to pulse in time with the music, its light intensifying as my connection deepened. I began to see images, not fleeting glimpses this time but clear, vivid scenes that unfolded before my eyes like a movie. I saw the hawk in their ancient homeland, a lush, verdant paradise teeming with life. They were not the primitive people I had imagined but a highly advanced civilization, possessing a profound understanding of nature and the universe. They had mastered the silent song, using it not only for healing and communication but also for manipulating energy, creating incredible works of art, and building structures that defied the laws of physics. I saw them building cities of light, harnessing the power of crystals, and communicating with beings from other dimensions. They were guardians of the planet, protectors of the delicate balance that sustained life. But then, I saw a shadow fall upon their world. A cataclysmic event, a cosmic upheaval that threatened to destroy everything they had built. The hawk, using all their knowledge and skill, managed to avert the disaster, but at a terrible cost. Their homeland was shattered, their civilization scattered, and their connection to the silent song weakened. They retreated to the hidden valleys of the Olympic Mountains, seeking refuge from the chaos and destruction. They vowed to protect the crystal skull, the key to their ancient power, until the time was right to share it with the world. But the world was not ready. Humans, driven by greed and ambition, began to encroach upon their territory, seeking to exploit their resources and steal their secrets. The hawk, wary of the destructive potential of humanity, retreated further into the shadows, guarding their knowledge and protecting themselves from harm. Jed's story was just a small part of a much larger narrative, a story that spanned millennia and encompassed the fate of an entire civilization. And now, I was a part of that story, a reluctant participant in a cosmic drama that I barely understood. The visions faded, leaving me breathless and overwhelmed. I realized that the crystal skull was not just a tool or a key, it was a repository of knowledge, a living library that contained the history of the hawk and the secrets of the silent song. And it had chosen me to be its custodian. Why? What did it see in me that made me worthy of such a responsibility? I was just an ordinary person, a hiker who had stumbled upon something extraordinary. I had no special skills, no unique talents, no experience in dealing with ancient civilizations or cosmic dramas. But perhaps that was the point. Perhaps the skull had chosen me because I was ordinary. Because I had no preconceived notions, no hidden agendas, no desire for power or glory. Perhaps it saw in me a genuine desire to help, a willingness to learn, and a capacity for compassion. Regardless of the reason, I knew that I couldn't shirk my responsibility. The fate of the hawk, and perhaps the world, rested on my shoulders. I had to learn to control the silent song, to protect the crystal skull, and to share its wisdom with those who were ready to receive it. But how? Where do I even begin? I needed guidance, instruction, a teacher who could help me unlock the secrets of the skull and master the power of the silent song. Jed was the obvious choice, but I hesitated. He had already risked so much by telling me about the hawk. Would he be willing to put himself in danger again? And even if he was, could he teach me what I needed to know? He had been banished from the hawk, after all. His knowledge of the silent song might be incomplete, even flawed. As I pondered my options, I heard a sound, a faint rustling in the bushes outside the cave. I grabbed my knife and cautiously approached the entrance. A small, brown rabbit hopped into the clearing, its nose twitching nervously. It looked at me with its big, innocent eyes, and then, to my surprise, it spoke. "Greetings, Seeker," it said in a clear, melodic voice. "We have been expecting you." I stared at the rabbit in disbelief. Had I finally lost my mind? Was the silent song driving me insane? "Don't be alarmed," the rabbit said, as if reading my thoughts. "I am not just a rabbit. I am a messenger, sent by the elders of the Hawk. They know of your quest, and they wish to offer you their assistance." The elders of the Hawk. They knew about me. How was that possible? "The silent song connects us all," the rabbit explained. "We can sense your presence, your intentions, your potential. We have seen your heart, and we believe that you are worthy of our trust." The rabbit paused, as if waiting for me to respond. I was still struggling to process what was happening, but I managed to stammer out a question. "What kind of assistance?" "We can guide you on your journey," the rabbit said. "We can teach you to control the silent song, to protect the crystal skull, and to fulfill your destiny." But Jed said he was banished. Why would they help me now? Jed's exile was a necessary sacrifice, the rabbit said gravely. He bore a great burden to protect us all. But his path is his own. Your path is yours. As he protected you, we will guide you both. How can I trust you? The rabbit tilted its head, its eyes filled with a strange mix of wisdom and amusement. You cannot, it said. You must choose to trust. Trust in yourself, trust in the silent song, and trust in the guidance that is offered to you. We can only show you the path. It is up to you to walk it. The rabbit hopped closer, its nose almost touching my hand. If you are willing to accept our help, follow me, it said. I will lead you to a place where you can learn the secrets of the silent song. I hesitated for a moment, weighing my options. This was all happening too fast, too suddenly. But I knew that I couldn't afford to be cautious. The fate of the hawk, and perhaps the world, depended on me. I took a deep breath and made my decision. I'm ready, I said. Lead the way. The rabbit turned and hopped into the forest, disappearing into the shadows. I followed close behind, my heart pounding in my chest. The journey was long and arduous, leading me through winding trails, across treacherous ravines, and over towering mountains. The rabbit moved with incredible speed and agility, effortlessly navigating the rugged terrain. I struggled to keep up, my body aching, my lungs burning. As we traveled, the rabbit shared snippets of information about the hawk, their history, their culture, and their philosophy. It spoke of the importance of balance, of respecting nature, and of living in harmony with the universe. It taught me about the different aspects of the silent song, its power to heal, to protect, and to transform. But it also warned me about the dangers of misuse, the temptation to control, and the corrupting influence of power. The silent song, it explained, was not a tool to be wielded but a force to be guided. It required humility, compassion, and a deep understanding of its inherent limitations. After several days of travel, we finally reached our destination, a hidden grove deep within the heart of the Olympic Mountains. It was a place of incredible beauty and tranquility, a sanctuary of ancient trees, sparkling streams, and vibrant wildflowers. The air was thick with the scent of pine and cedar, and the silence was broken only by the gentle murmur of the wind. In the center of the grove stood a circle of standing stones, each carved with intricate symbols and glyphs. The stones radiated a palpable energy, a feeling of ancient power that resonated deep within my soul. As I approached the stones, I saw a group of figures emerge from the shadows. They were the elders of the hawk, their faces etched with wisdom and experience. They were dressed in simple robes, their eyes filled with a gentle light. The leader of the elders, an old woman with long, silver hair, stepped forward and greeted me with a warm smile. Welcome, Seeker, she said. We have been expecting you. You have come far, and you have endured much. Now, your training begins. And as the elders led me into the circle of stones, I knew that my life was about to change forever. The weight of the skull felt lighter than before, and the future path clearer. But the biggest question of all loomed large: what had Jed been tasked with protecting? Had he known all along what was to come? The old woman's smile was both reassuring and unsettling. It held kindness, yes, but also a depth of knowledge that dwarfed my own understanding of the world. Stepping into the circle of stones felt like entering a different dimension. The air crackled with energy, a tangible hum that vibrated through my bones. The silent song swelled, not in volume, but in complexity, layering upon itself in intricate patterns that both soothed and overwhelmed. The elders formed a ring around me, their faces serene, their eyes closed. They began to chant, a low, resonant drone that seemed to emanate from the very earth beneath my feet. The symbols on the stones pulsed with light, mirroring the rhythm of the chanting. The crystal skull, which I still clutched tightly in my hand, grew warm, radiating a gentle heat that spread through my body. Images flooded my mind, not the clear, cinematic visions I had experienced before, but fragmented glimpses, fleeting impressions, like shattered pieces of a mirror reflecting different aspects of the hawk's history. I saw them tending their gardens, cultivating strange and luminous plants. I saw them crafting intricate devices from crystal and metal, harnessing the power of the sun and the stars. I saw them meditating in caves, their minds reaching out to connect with other beings, other worlds. The chanting intensified, and the images became more vivid, more coherent. I saw the cataclysm that had shattered their civilization, the cosmic upheaval that had ripped their world apart. It wasn't a natural disaster, as I had initially assumed, but something far more sinister, a deliberate act of aggression by a force that was both powerful and malevolent. The hawk had been at war, a war that spanned dimensions and involved beings beyond human comprehension. They had fought bravely, using their knowledge of the silent song and their mastery of energy to defend their world. But they were ultimately outmatched, their civilization decimated, their homeland reduced to ruins. The elders opened their eyes, their gaze focused on me. "You see now," the old woman said, her voice gentle but firm. "You see the darkness that threatens our world, the forces that seek to destroy all that we hold dear. But who are they?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What do they want?" "They are the Shadow Lords," the old woman replied. "Beings of pure entropy, driven by a desire to consume and destroy. They feed on chaos and discord, and they seek to unravel the fabric of reality itself." "And the hawk fought them?" "We fought them," the old woman said. "And we managed to contain them, to push them back into the darkness from whence they came. But they are not gone. They are merely dormant, waiting for an opportunity to strike again." "And the crystal skull, what does it have to do with all of this?" "The crystal skull is a key," the old woman explained. "A key to unlocking the power of the silent song, a power that can be used to either create or destroy. In the wrong hands, it could be used to unleash the Shadow Lords upon the world, to plunge humanity into eternal darkness. But in the right hands, it can be used to defend against them, to protect the balance of the universe." She stepped closer, her eyes searching my soul. "You have been chosen, Seeker," she said. "Chosen to be the guardian of the crystal skull, the protector of the silent song. But you are not yet ready. You must learn to control your powers, to master your emotions, to become a true warrior of the light." And so began my training. The elders taught me the ancient ways of the hawk, the secrets of the silent song, the techniques of meditation, and the arts of healing. They pushed me to my limits, challenging me both physically and mentally. They forced me to confront my fears, my doubts, and my insecurities. I learned to harness the power of the crystal skull, to channel its energy, and to use it for healing and protection. I learned to control the silent song, to shape its melodies, and to use it to communicate with other beings, other dimensions. I learned to meditate, to quiet my mind, and to connect with the universal consciousness. The training was rigorous and demanding, but it was also incredibly rewarding. I felt myself growing stronger, more confident, more capable. I was no longer just an ordinary hiker. I was becoming something more, something greater. As the weeks turned into months, I began to understand the true nature of the silent song. It wasn't just a collection of sounds or a form of communication. It was a fundamental force of the universe, a creative energy that permeated all things. It was the source of life, the foundation of reality, the essence of existence. And the hawk had learned to tap into this power, to harness its energy, and to use it for the benefit of all. They were not just guardians of the planet. They were stewards of the universe, protectors of the delicate balance that sustained all life. But the Shadow Lords threatened to disrupt this balance, to corrupt the silent song, and to plunge the universe into chaos. They were a force of pure destruction, driven by a relentless hunger for power. And they would stop at nothing to achieve their goals. The elders told me stories of past battles, of epic struggles between the hawk and the Shadow Lords. They spoke of heroes who had sacrificed everything to protect the universe, of villains who had succumbed to the darkness and betrayed their own people. They warned me that the war was far from over, that the Shadow Lords were still lurking in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to strike. And they told me that I was now on the front lines of this war, that the fate of the universe rested on my shoulders. The weight of this responsibility was almost unbearable. I was just one person, a mere mortal, facing an enemy that was ancient, powerful, and seemingly unstoppable. How could I possibly hope to succeed? But the elders reminded me that I was not alone. I had the support of the hawk, the guidance of the silent song, and the power of the crystal skull. And most importantly, I had the courage to fight for what was right, to stand up against the darkness, and to protect the innocent. One evening, as I was meditating in the grove, I received a vision. It was a clear, vivid image of Jed, standing in a dark and desolate landscape. He was surrounded by shadowy figures, their faces hidden, their intentions malevolent. He was in danger. I immediately told the elders about my vision. They listened intently, their faces grave. "The Shadow Lords are moving," the old woman said. "They are seeking to eliminate all those who pose a threat to their plans." "We must help him," I said. "We have to save him." "It will be dangerous," the old woman warned. "The Shadow Lords are powerful, and they will not hesitate to kill anyone who stands in their way." "I don't care," I said. "I can't just stand here and do nothing while Jed is in danger." The elders exchanged glances, their faces filled with concern. They knew that I was determined, that nothing could dissuade me from my course. "Very well," the old woman said. "We will help you. But you must be careful. The Shadow Lords are cunning and ruthless. They will try to exploit your weaknesses, to turn you against your friends." The elders prepared me for my journey, equipping me with ancient weapons, protective amulets, and powerful healing potions. They taught me new techniques for using the silent song, for cloaking myself in invisibility, and for teleporting short distances. Before I left, the old woman placed her hand on my shoulder, her eyes filled with wisdom and compassion. "Remember, Seeker," she said. "The greatest weapon against the darkness is love. Love for yourself, love for your friends, and love for all beings. Let love guide your actions, and you will never lose your way." I thanked the elders for their help and their guidance, and I set off on my journey to find Jed. I followed the visions that came to me in my meditations, using the silent song to guide my path. The journey was fraught with peril. I encountered strange and dangerous creatures, creatures that had been corrupted by the Shadow Lords. I had to fight them off, using all my skills and abilities. I also had to evade the Shadow Lords themselves. They were always watching, always lurking in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to strike. I could feel their presence, a cold and malevolent energy that sent shivers down my spine. As I traveled, I began to understand the true scope of the Shadow Lords' influence. They had infiltrated every level of society, corrupting governments, manipulating economies, and spreading fear and discord. They were masters of deception, capable of disguising themselves as anyone, of manipulating events to suit their purposes. It became clear to me that the war against the Shadow Lords was not just a physical battle. It was a battle for the hearts and minds of humanity. It was a battle for the future of the universe. After weeks of traveling, I finally reached the desolate landscape that I had seen in my vision. It was a barren wasteland, devoid of all life. The air was thick with a choking dust, and the sky was a perpetual gray. I could feel the presence of the Shadow Lords, a dark and oppressive energy that permeated every corner of this desolate place. I knew that Jed was close. I cautiously approached the center of the wasteland, my senses on high alert. Suddenly, I heard a scream, a cry of pain that pierced the silence. It was Jed. I ran towards the sound, my heart pounding in my chest. I found him tied to a stake, surrounded by the shadowy figures I had seen in my vision. They were torturing him, using strange and arcane devices. "Let him go!" I shouted, my voice echoing across the wasteland. The shadowy figures turned to face me, their faces still hidden, their eyes burning with malice. "You have come," one of them said, his voice cold and emotionless. "We have been expecting you." "Release Jed," I said. "He has done nothing wrong." "He knows too much," the shadowy figure replied. "He is a threat to our plans." "Then take me instead," I said. "Let him go, and I will surrender myself to you." The shadowy figures exchanged glances, their faces hidden, their intentions unclear. After a moment of silence, the leader spoke. "Very well," he said. "We accept your offer. Release Jed." The other shadowy figures hesitated, but they obeyed their leader's command. They untied Jed from the stake and pushed him towards me. He was weak and injured, his face covered in blood and bruises. But he was alive. "Get out of here," I said to him. "Run as fast as you can. Don't look back." "I'm not leaving you," he said, his voice hoarse. "You have to," I said. "I can handle this. Just go." He hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He turned and ran, disappearing into the dust and shadows. The shadowy figures closed in around me, their eyes burning with malice. "Now," the leader said, "you will pay the price for your defiance." I braced myself for the attack, ready to fight to the death. But as the shadowy figures moved closer, I noticed something strange. They were not moving in unison. They were arguing, their voices hushed but intense. "What are you doing?" the leader demanded. "Attack." But the other shadowy figures ignored him. They continued to argue, their voices growing louder, their movements more erratic. Suddenly, one of the shadowy figures turned on the leader and attacked him. The other shadowy figures joined in, and a chaotic brawl erupted. I watched in disbelief as the shadowy figures tore each other apart, their forms dissolving into dust and shadows. Within moments, the leader was the only one left standing. He was badly wounded, his form flickering and unstable. He turned to face me, his eyes filled with rage and frustration. "This is not over," he said. "We will meet again." And with that, he vanished into the shadows. I stood there for a moment, catching my breath, trying to make sense of what had just happened. What had caused the shadowy figures to turn on each other? Had the silent song influenced their actions? Or was there something else at play? I knew that I couldn't stay here. The Shadow Lords would be back, and I needed to find Jed, to make sure he was safe. I turned and ran in the direction he had gone, using the silent song to guide me. After several hours of searching, I finally found him. He was hiding in a cave, nursing his wounds. "Are you okay?" I asked. "I'll be all right," he said. "Thanks to you." "What happened back there?" I asked. "Why did the shadowy figures turn on each other?" Jed shook his head. "I don't know," he said. "But I have a feeling it has something to do with the skull." The skull. I had almost forgotten about it. I reached into my pocket and pulled it out. It was glowing faintly, pulsating with energy. "I think it's trying to tell us something," I said. I closed my eyes and focused on the skull, allowing the silent song to flow through me. Images flooded my mind, fragmented glimpses of the past, the present, and the future. I saw the Hawk, their ancient civilization, their battles against the Shadow Lords. I saw the cataclysm that had shattered their world, the scattering of their people. I saw Jed, his journey, his struggles, his sacrifices. And then I saw something new, something I had never seen before. I saw a vision of a hidden city, a place of incredible beauty and power, located deep within the earth. It was a sanctuary, a refuge, a place where the Hawk had preserved their knowledge, their culture, and their technology. It was a place called Agartha. And the skull was the key to finding it. Jed and I looked at each other, our faces filled with wonder and excitement. "Agartha," he said. "Do you think it's real?" "I don't know," I said. "But I think we have to find out." We knew that the journey would be long and dangerous, that the Shadow Lords would be watching our every move. But we were determined to find Agartha, to uncover its secrets, and to use its power to defeat the darkness. We packed our supplies and set off on our journey, following the guidance of the skull and the silent song. We traveled through deserts, mountains, and forests, facing countless challenges and overcoming numerous obstacles. As we traveled, Jed began to open up about his past, about his time with the Hawk, about his banishment. He told me about his regrets, his fears, and his hopes for the future. I learned that he had been banished because he had questioned the elders' decisions, because he had believed that they were being too secretive, too protective of their knowledge. He had wanted to share the Hawk's wisdom with the world, to help humanity advance and evolve. But the elders had feared that humanity was not ready for such knowledge, that it would be misused and abused. They had believed that it was better to keep the Hawk's secrets hidden, to protect them from the outside world. Jed had disagreed, and he had paid the price for his defiance. He had been banished from the Hawk, stripped of his powers, and left to wander the world alone. But he had never given up hope. He had always believed that one day, the world would be ready for the Hawk's wisdom, that one day, humanity would be able to embrace its potential. And now, with the help of the skull and the silent song, he had a chance to make that dream a reality. As we journeyed, I also began to learn more about myself, about my own strengths and weaknesses, about my own potential. I discovered that I had a natural talent for healing, that I could use the silent song to ease pain and suffering, to mend broken bodies and broken spirits. I also discovered that I had a deep connection to nature, that I could communicate with animals, plants, and even the very earth itself. I could feel their pain, their joy, and their wisdom. And I realized that the Hawk had not just chosen me to be the guardian of the skull. They had chosen me to be a bridge between their world and the human world, to help humanity awaken to its true potential. After months of traveling, we finally reached our destination, a hidden cave located deep within the earth. It was the entrance to Agartha. We stepped inside, our hearts pounding in our chests. The cave was dark and narrow, but as we ventured deeper, it began to widen and brighten. The walls were lined with crystals, radiating a soft and ethereal light. And then, we emerged into a vast and breathtaking cavern. It was a city of light, a place of incredible beauty and wonder. Buildings made of crystal soared into the sky, connected by bridges of light. Waterfalls cascaded down the cavern walls, feeding lush gardens filled with exotic plants and flowers. And in the center of the city, we saw the Hawk. They were waiting for us, their faces filled with joy and anticipation. We had finally found Agartha. We had finally found our home. But our journey was far from over. The Shadow Lords were still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to strike. And we knew that they would not rest until they had destroyed Agartha and plunged the world into darkness. The Hawk and the Shadow Lords were destined to continue the fight. Now it was up to us to find out which side Jed had been tasked to protect. Had he known all along? We both felt the intensity rise as new visions and realities came closer and closer.